it would appear that the hottest, and by hot I mean the best, and by best we mean the fastest selling CPU to end 2022 back in December, wasn't or isn't what you think, or isn't the CPU you would have originally thought. That would be the hottest or fastest selling AMD Ryzen based CPU, at least according to this German retailer. You may or may not have heard of it, but we're going to talk about the report in this video. So with that out of the way, let's jump right into it. But first, I welcome you to hit the like button for me so we can get this article out in front of as many eyes as possible. Comment down below with your opinions on thought on the subject matter, and most importantly, if you're a first-time viewer here, I welcome you to hit the subscribe button with the notification bell on so you can catch all future content and updates. And the article that we're going to highlight today is one from Digitrends with the title indicating that no one wants to buy AMD Zen 4 chips. What's going on now? Of course, that might be a bit of an oxymoron because these chips are for somebody, but according to this German retailer, some things might, or the data might seem skewed in the direction that PC gamers are likely to head, with this trend from 2022 following suit over into 2023. And so according to Digitrends, they say AMD Zen 4 processors could be in deep trouble according to recent sales data. In fact, it looks like Zen 4 chips could be 5 times less popular than the previous generation Zen 3. Why is no one buying Zen 4? What I believe is the case that Zen 4 isn't as popular as, say, Zen 3 is likely in part due to the cost of AM5 motherboards or X670 motherboards, being that they are incredibly they're overpriced. I don't want to say overpriced, but they are quite expensive. The biggest factor that you have to take into consideration why that is that AMD has opted into only support DDR5 on their AM5 platform for Zen 4, thus adding that extra cost for DDR5 modules, which DDR5 prices have came down slightly in the past, but haven't quite gotten there to where they're as consumer friendly that would entice most PC gamers who are either looking to upgrade to Zen 4, a Zen 4 CPU, maybe that 7950X or 7900X, right? Because they now have to factor in the cost of DDR5, and that it is significantly, not significantly, but it is noticeably more expensive than DDR4. As the article highlights, the data comes from German retailer Mind Factory, which provides daily sales data for a range of processors, both Intel and AMD. And as mentioned in the beginning of this video, the findings for December 2022 paint a interesting picture for AMD. For instance, the article highlights that Mind Factory's data breaks down AMD chips by generation and tier. Here's where it gets interesting, y'all. December 2022, 15% of AMD chips sold by the retailer were Zen 4 or Ryzen 7000 Raphael processors, 13% were Zen 3/Ryzen 5000G Cyclone, and 71% were Zen 3/Ryzen 5000 Vermeer CPUs, as the article did the math for me and for us. But that equates to 84% of Mind Factory's sales all came from Zen 3 chips. Now, where does that leave AMD, or what does that say about the AM5 platform in general? Or as I put it in a previous video last year, the fact that AM4 still has a great deal of life expectancy on that platform, right, on that socket, as most budget focused or budget friendly gamers had the idea that a 3800X or even a 5800X is just as enticing as, say, a 7700X or a 7800X, and you might have even already had that AM4 motherboard, and a simple BIOS update may allow you to go ahead and throw in one of those Vermeer Ryzen Zen 3 5000 series CPUs, picking up one for about $200 to $300, depending on where you're located at here in the world. Taxes and other things might come into play that are just out of our control. But generally, most Zen 3 CPUs can be picked up for a budget-friendly deal. And with the used market providing an abundance of AM4 motherboards, that's even more savings that could be trickled down and put in other areas of your build. But again, as the article points out, as we switch back here, that 15% of the AMD chips sold by the retailer Mind Factory were Zen 4 or Ryzen 7000 Raphael processors, the ones that just came out. 13% were Zen 3 Cyclone, and 71% was Zen. 71% were Zen 3 / Ryzen 5000. Ryzen 5000 still holding on, making a splash, maintaining its relevancy.
And AM4 is still going strong.
You never know with AMD, but they're not quite ready to let go of AM4. But heading back over to the article, it says compare that to Zen 4 sales, which made up a mere 15%, and the difference is stark. Mind Factory sold 5.6 times as many Zen 3 chips as they did in Zen 4. Now, why is that a big problem? Listen on. This is just data from one retailer, and the picture might be different elsewhere. This might be very true, but this is highly indicative of the market as a whole. But that will probably not be much comfort to AMD, the article states, given that the company's Zen 4 chips are seemingly selling so poorly just 3 months after launch. But as the article states, it doesn't appear that AMD's rival, Intel, Team Blue, is suffering the same problem, at least not to the same extent. According to Mind Factory's data, 46% of Intel CPU sales in December of 2022 were of the latest Raptor Lake chips, compared to 43% of the previous generation or the previous Alder Lake processors. Now, what could have caused Zen 3 to have such a huge lead over the latest generation AMD processors, the article states? And while I wholeheartedly agree with this part, Zen 4 was launched in September 2022, while Zen 3 first saw the light of day back in November 2020, meaning that Zen 4 hasn't had long enough to eat into the sales of its predecessor, a la Zen 3. And so again, what does that mean? Well, for starters, as the article pointed out, that Zen 4 hasn't lived long enough to chew into some of the market share that Zen 3 now has a firm grasp on with AMD Ryzen fan or AMD Ryzen based users. But 10 months down the road is just not long enough for Zen 4 to creep in and really say, hey gamers, you need me, you want to upgrade to me. AM5 is the future is now, ditch your old Zen 3 CPU and come on over here to the AM5 side. Well, that just wasn't the case, and this could be one of the reasons why, at least from Mind Factory, at least from this retailer, that they're pointing out that 71% of the CPUs sold in December of 2022 were Ryzen 5000 based CPUs, with the 5800X being the popular choice among gamers looking to buy a CPU from that retailer. Because if you see here, switching back over to the article, that the top CPUs sold, or the top 5, let's start with the top 5. The top 5 base CPUs sold were all Ryzen 5000 based CPUs, and out of the 5, 3 of them were 5800X variants, or Ryzen 5800 variants, with the 5800X and the 5800X 3D. The 5800X came in here third among the most popular CPUs purchased over there from Mind Factory. The i5-12400F, another good quality or high quality gaming CPU that can be picked up for under $200. Again, this is highly problematic for AMD, given that Zen 4 released 3 months later, and here it can't even break into the top five of CPUs sold over there at Mind Factory. Now, as the article states, that it doesn't appear that AMD's rival had the same problem, at least not to the same extent. According to Mind Factory, 46% of Intel CPU sales in 2022 were of the latest Raptor Lake chips, compared to 43%. But what could have caused Zen 3 to have such a huge lead over the latest generation AMD processors? The article states, well, Zen 4 was only launched in September 2022. But again, the article says that doesn't fully explain the problem AMD is apparently facing. Intel's Raptor Lake, for example, was launched even later than Zen 4 in October 2022, and yet Intel seems to have very little trouble convincing its customers to upgrade. As DigiTrends noted in their AMD 7000 vs Raptor Lake explainer, AMD's newer chips incur noticeably higher costs than Intel's Raptor Lakes, thanks to their expensive DDR5 memory and lack of affordable compatible motherboards. Again, talked about that earlier in this video. Not only that, if you go back and watch the announcement video I made on Zen 4, when I first mentioned that this could very much be the case, that we could see slow Zen 4 sales out the gate, and that's because of the increased price of the AM5 motherboards being slightly out of range for most gamers looking to upgrade. I mean, we're talking between DDR5 and an AM5 motherboard and a Zen 4 CPU, somewhere along the tune of $600 to $700 to upgrade, and that's hefty compared to the performance you're going to get. So if you're on, say, a 2700X or a 2600, something along the lines of a Zen Plus or a Zen 3 CPU, or I'm sorry, not a Zen 3, but a Zen Plus, or even an OG Zen CPU like a 1600 or an 1800X, and you've been kind of holding your keeping your cards pretty close to your chest and looking for a reason to upgrade, keeping your AM4 motherboard and researching to see if it has a compatible BIOS with AM5 could be the best path for you versus, say, going all in, at least right now, on a Zen 4 CPU. But then switching back to the article, as Digital Trends points out that those larger ecosystem costs might have pushed people away from pulling that trigger on Zen 4. Gee, who would have thought? But it wasn't all bad news for AMD. The company's chips top Mind Factory's list of CPUs sold, with the Zen 3 5800X 3D, 5600X, and 5800X all leading the way. Again, mentioning that the top 5 CPUs sold over there from Mind Factory are all Ryzen 5000 Zen 3 based CPUs. And with the most popular Zen 4 chip is the Ryzen 7700X, which languishes all the way down in 12th place. And now, what does that mean for AMD? That honestly remains to be seen, as these were figures that were pulled from December 2022. And while you can expect to see a continued trend of Zen 3 selling more than Zen 4, at least right now in this quarter, consider that you could pick up a Ryzen 7 5700X for a little over 200 USD or slightly under 200 USD, or a Ryzen 5800X for about 300 USD, and an AM4 motherboard for 100 to 150 USD, depending on where you are in your market again, or where you're located. But even over on the used market, you could pick up a decent AM4 motherboard, and chances are it already has the necessary BIOS required to run a newer Ryzen 5000 base CPU. Maybe you even have to ask the seller to confirm, hey, what BIOS is on the motherboard I'm interested in this CPU, or what was the last CPU you ran in the motherboard, if such information isn't listed. Now, it's not all gloom and doom, and Ryzen 7000 or Zen 4 has been out for about 3 months, or a little over 3 months and some change. Still too early to tell, but these figures were staggering to say the least. And while I am a fan of legacy components, or legacy hardware as we call it here in this channel or this community, it's good to see previous generation CPUs selling, like the Ryzen 5000 series CPU or Zen 3 over on Mind Factory's website. It's showing that PC gamers aren't just deadlocked and focused in on the future, that they are considering other alternatives, value alternatives to suit their needs. In the 8-core 16-thread Ryzen 7 5800X or 5700X are solid chips. We did a video with the 5800X and the mini ITX build. You can find that video down in the description box below, or I'll link it up here in the cards. Again, hit the like button for me if you haven't yet, and subscribe if you're new to the community. But that out the way, that's all for this one. I do hope to catch you in the next one. So until then, be easy.